We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It is Thursday, moving through the week. Plenty of shit happening, plenty of shit to talk about. I have to own up to yesterday. First of all, thanks to Eric for joining me on the program. That's always a big help. Has some great insights. He's in Iowa, so there's a lot of shit going on down there. I appreciate that. And again, I'll just remind folks, if you want to be on the show, very simple. You just email me at rationalboomer@gmail.com. Say, hey, Mike, I want to be on the show. And we'll set up a time that's appropriate or convenient for both of us, and we'll do the show. It's as simple as that. You've heard a number of people who've already been on the show, and it always goes pretty well. If you feel a little self-conscious, you can always just send an email. We got a bunch of emails today, so you get a sense of what kind of things people are commenting on or asking about. It's funny when I get people asking me questions, I think to myself, who the fuck do you think you are that you can answer all these questions? And it has nothing to do with being really smart, because I'm not really smart, but I'm diligent about finding out about things. I'm naturally curious. So when these stories come out, I dig pretty deep into them, and it just kind of sits in my mind. And if I can answer the question, I do. If I can't, I'll say, I don't know, but I'll find out. So anyway, we got a bunch of emails. Yesterday, I spent most of the time fucking off. Wife said, let's get out, go to a casino, do something. And that's pretty much what we did. I didn't pay a lot of attention to the news, but there were a few things that came up that were kind of interesting. One of them being Mark Meadows. Mark Meadows is really getting a little squirmy about going on trial in Georgia, as well as he should, because not only is he in a precarious position, but it's going to be on TV too. So that's probably causing him some pain. Anyway, Mark Meadows did say that he wanted his case moved to federal court, if for no other reason than if it went to federal court, it wouldn't likely be on television. But of course, he pled his case. The judge said, yeah, that's not a case. No, we're not sending you to federal court. And then, of course, immediately after that, he appealed it, as Republicans tend to do. They keep losing appeals, but they keep fucking appealing all the goddamn time. Anyway, while he's waiting for this appeal, he doesn't know exactly when it's going to come out. He went to the judge and said, hey, look, I appealed this. So can we get a stay on my trial? Because we're talking next month. Can we get a stay on the trial until I get an answer on my appeal? Now, I think he really thought that he might get that benefit. But the judge who turned away his first request to be put into the federal courts basically told him, you don't have a case here. I mean, it's not even up for debate. You have no case. And so when he asked for the stay, he says, I don't think you're going to win the appeal. So no, you don't get the stay. You are going to have to go on trial. So Mark Meadows may be running out of things to do. But I will tell you this, and you're probably hearing about it a lot. There's a lot of motions being filed. Donald Trump wants this case dismissed, or maybe going to federal court, all this stuff. But this is pretty much what happens after somebody's been indicted and charged. They throw all these motions out, most of which they don't think will see the light of day or stick to the wall. But it's kind of like they have to do that. And then, of course, it may or may not help them should they need to appeal the case after they've lost it. So this is a lot of, posing or getting everything in order so that should they need it later, they at least did their due diligence and got some of this shit done. So that's interesting. As I said, we have a bunch of emails, so let's get to it. Now, this first one is kind of interesting. It wasn't an email per se. It was a comment, I think, on my YouTube. Those of you watching on YouTube, it was a guy who came and made a comment on my YouTube. Now, I have to give you an explanation of this guy. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to give him any kind of exposure or publicity. He's a dipshit. This is a guy who I first met when I was on my personal Facebook page, just my page. And on that page, I was doing a lot of similar things to what I do on the current Facebook page, the Rational Boomer Facebook page, or TikTok and the like. And he was a Trump humper that was spouting off and coming back at me. After a while of listening to his bullshit and his conspiracy theories and his ridiculousness, I blocked him. No big deal. Never expected to hear from him again. But then when I started out the Rational Boomer Facebook, after a time, he started popping up over there too, doing the same shit. So I blocked him again. I will block him anywhere I see him come around. Well, for whatever reason, he seems insistent on making his comments on my post. And he wrote me this short note. I want to read it to you. He says, I apparently pissed you off enough that you dedicated an entire 3-minute short podcast concerning me. First of all, it's not a podcast, it's TikTok. And I didn't spend 3 minutes on it. I spent like 2, and I didn't mention your name. I was just talking about the shit you were talking about. Don't give yourself too much credit. You really don't enter my mind that much. Anyway, he says, yeah, I probably screwed up. You always say that you're open to inviting people onto one of your podcasts. No, that would be the only podcast. That would be this podcast. He said, I might consider giving a Canadian's view from my own perspective, but I will not consider it until I've talked to you on the phone in person. Look, motherfucker, I'm not going to talk to you on the phone. I don't even want to see your post. You're fucking a goofball. You're a conspiracy theorist. And frankly, short of getting a Trump humper on this show and tearing them apart just for my own pleasure, I really don't want to give you a platform. And that's essentially what he's trying to do. These Trumplafucks can't draw flies, so they jump on platforms like mine or maybe like yours to try to get exposure so they can spew their shit. The problem with it is nobody thinks anything of him other than he's a fucking nutcase. And I will say this, I have had guests on the show that are from Canada, and I get their views just fine. I'm not going to let you on the podcast and spew your shit. I would love nothing more than to tear you apart in public, but you know, you're just not smart enough. It would be like kicking a puppy, and I'm not going to put you on. In fact, I'm going to block you at every turn, not because I'm worried about you or I think you're going to say something that might be embarrassing or whatever. It's you're boring the piss out of me. You say the same shit over and over again. You're not even a challenge if I were to debate you. But you're right. I said, you always say that you are open to inviting people onto one of your podcasts or this podcast. And you're right about that. I will accept anybody on the podcast except you, motherfucker. You're not coming on this podcast. No way, no how. Clearly, you've got a screw loose for whatever reason you think you need to keep following me, but you're fucking done. I want nothing to do with you. On that happy note, this next one comes from Old Soul. And that's a good way to pick things up again. Everybody seems to love Old Soul. I do too. She says, hey, Boomer, you won't believe what Senator Kennedy read in a hearing this morning. If you need a good laugh, this will definitely do it. I laugh so hard, it's comical, but Senator Kennedy is dead serious. This isn't getting attention because the Biden impeachment investigation announcement, but it's just too funny. For context, this book isn't in a school or in the children's section of the public library. It's a book in the adult section of the public library. They're using this to start banning books in public libraries now. They're using the protecting children ruse. He made it seem like this book was in schools, but it's not. Oh my God, this is hilarious. Here's the link below. Thanks, Boomer. Now, I've heard parts of this little speech from Kennedy, and he's a fucking goofball. But it might have been racy material or even sexually oriented things. But some people read that shit. I don't, but that doesn't mean other people can't and adults can't. It wasn't in the children's section. It wasn't in schools, but they're more than willing to lie to get their point across. I mean, this is the essence of who the Republican Party is. They will make shit up. They will lie about shit just to support whatever agenda they have. I will tell you this, old soul, this shit is working less and less every day. Everything for the Republicans is falling apart, and this kind of stuff is absolutely ridiculous. People like yourself and probably the media will expose this dipshit for what he is. And when we get past 2024, everything's going to change. These Republicans that now have a platform will no longer, and will hopefully try to get things back to a reasonable level in this country. All right, this next email comes to us from Trevor. He's out in the Northwest. He said, "Dear Boomer, I don't know if you read my email about Trump going to jail and how I was jumping out of my chair and singing hallelujah to God, but whatever. I'm writing this email because Kevin McCarthy has got to be the dumbest fucking House Speaker in the world. He doesn't have any evidence to impeach President Biden for the Ukraine war. Your boyfriend Trump has been impeached twice and indicted more than a former president of the United States, and he has multiple criminal, he says convictions, he means charges against him. You need evidence to impeach a president, dumb fuck, Trevor." And you're absolutely right. This whole thing about trying to impeach Joe Biden is absolutely ridiculous. They don't have evidence. They've been digging for evidence for 5 years. Half of that time under the Trump administration, they have found nothing. That should tell you how desperate they are. They have no evidence, but they're still going after it. They even admit that they don't have evidence, but they just have a feeling there's something there. I heard somebody say, "Oh, we'll talk about this later. Well, yeah, but he's got a nice house and he has this and he has that, so there must be something shady going on." Yeah, I can see how that would be more concerning than Jared Kushner getting $2 billion for apparently nothing. But there was somebody in the House. His name is, I think it's Jared Moskowitz. He's a new guy, but he's good. And he tore the Republicans apart. He's basically saying, "What's up with Jared? How come you don't want to look at Jared? This sounds sketchy as shit, but you don't want to look at it, but you want to continue to try to go after Joe Biden when there is no evidence." You're right, Trevor. There is no evidence. And frankly, I hope they have this impeachment inquiry. I hope they even have an impeachment vote, because, and I think you won't see the vote because they can't win. They want to stir some shit and they want to try to stain Joe Biden's reputation, which won't work. But they'll never vote on it because they can't win, and then they'll be exposed for how weak they truly are. All right, this next email starts out, "Hey, Mike, simply put, a patriot is one who loves and supports their country. Loving your country enough to criticize it and hope it does better as we do, wanting it to be a better place for all, even the ones who hate us for it. Conversely, hating 2/3 of the people who live here, especially marginalized groups, hating your own government and the very idea of democratic representation are the acts of an enemy, or at the very least, one who hates the country. I call this latter group fake-triots or hate-triots, and I think that's an accurate assumption." He goes on to say, "The fake-triots are trying to steal our flag. I wore the flag on my uniform, both stateside and in combat, as did my brothers and sisters from all walks of life, colors, creeds, and religions. Some came home in a flag-draped coffin, but it was and still is our flag." That may be the worst thing that Trump-lefucks did. They co-opted our flag and turned it into something that it's not. I said that, not the emailer. When we true patriots fly the flag, we follow etiquette, which means we don't fly a dirty, tattered one, or worse, one with the face of Trump or some slogan written on it, making it into a Punisher logo or putting a militia logo either. In fact, there is an actual set of guidelines for flag etiquette you can find online. When you read it, you'll note most of the fake triots flying one have no consideration for the flag they claim to love. They stole the symbol, they think, and now can do with it as they please. That's how arrogant they are. I'll be honest with you, they're not even thinking about the flag. Everything they do, when you see the cars, the boats with all the flags and the signs, their intent is only one thing, and that is to own the libtards. That's always been their interest and goal, and they are failing miserably. Email goes on, one way to let people know you're not a fake patriot when you fly the flag is to do it respectfully and with dignity, something they cannot and will not do. Another way is to put up a flag adjacent to it, such as a pride flag or BLM or other banner. I have a Be Nice sign, for instance. We need to refer to one another from time to time as patriots, but do it in context of, I appreciate your patriotism and support of Joe Biden. Or Fani Willis is a true patriot to prosecute Trump and others who tried to steal the election. I think you make some good points there because my wife has said the same thing. She's upset by the fact that they basically co-opted the flag, and it is something that it's not now. And it, makes people think twice before flying the flag. You're right. We need to get that back ASAP. He goes on to say they cannot be allowed to steal the flag or claim to be patriots when they in fact hate this country and want to destroy that which we've all built here, replacing it with a Christo-fascist, white nationalist dystopia. Thank you, Mike. I consider you an old soul and others here to be great patriots. My time serving this country is made sweeter knowing that you are my fellow countrymen. Respectfully, Al. Well, Al, thank you for your service. We appreciate the true patriots who fought for this country and are in fact patriotic now. So I think what you said, you hit on all cylinders there. And if we could get Republicans to understand what it truly means to be a patriot, we'd all be better off. Unfortunately, we have a bunch of people that aren't very bright and have other agendas other than what's best for this country. All right, this next email comes from Jace. He's in Texas. He's kind of keeping us up to date with what's going on with this impeachment trial in Texas with the Attorney General. He says, hey, Mike, well. Illustrious Texas Senate leader Dan Patrick has informed both sides that they're running out of time. He gave both sides a total of 24 hours each to present their case. Of course, prosecutors have used most of the time since all the defendant can do is accuse and throw out accusations since they aren't addressing the actual charges. And that's what Republicans do. You can say, you broke this law, and all they'll do is whataboutism. Oh, well, you did this or the Democrats did that. At some point when you're in court or in a legislative session, you got to speak to the facts. Unfortunately, if they did speak to the facts, they'd prove themselves guilty. Now, Patrick says they will work late and possibly start deliberating later in the week and work over the weekend if necessary. Wouldn't surprise me if they pull a Friday not guilty verdict to keep the hype down. I don't trust Republicans, and Texas Republicans are the worst. Ken Paxton, who's the AG who's being impeached at this point, Paxton is gutless like his buddy Trump and being absent most of the time. Shows he's not taking it seriously. Hope that bites him in his corrupt ass. Stay tuned. I'll keep you all updated. Jace. I heard something interesting too, and I think I may have a longer story for it later. But one of the people that testified, I think yesterday, was Paxton's mistress. which has got to be a little embarrassing, you would think. But just to add to the embarrassment and uncomfortableness of this whole situation, one of the senators that are in this trial or hearing is his wife. So his wife is part of the group that's judging him, and his mistress shows up to testify. Wow. I hope he had an agreement with her about this mistress, and this just wasn't uh, surprised on her. But these fucks, it sounds like his wife isn't any better than he is. They probably have some agreement. It's a marriage of convenience, and it's just about money or power or whatever the fuck it is. All right, the next email. Hey, Mike, I know you didn't get to my previous email update on Paxton trial since you had Eric on. I really enjoyed the episode and his take on things. But there you go, Jace. I just fucking did it. Just because I had Eric on and I don't do emails when I have a guest on doesn't mean I'm not going to get to it. And Jace, I got to it. You just heard it. But she had some other information. In addition to the update I sent yesterday about the trial wrapping up and them starting deliberations, this bit of news comes across the wires. Paxton's mistress. Oh, I fucked up his lead. Paxton's mistress is supposed to testify this afternoon, and it will be in front of his ex-wife. Don't you just love these Republicans and their family values? Just more lies and more bullshit. We'll let you know how it goes. Got my popcorn ready, Jace. Jace, thank you for keeping us up to date. I'll be honest with you, I have a tough time keeping track of what's going on in Texas, and to have a correspondent, if you will, in Texas is much appreciated. This is an important case, and this could have far-reaching ramifications. So even though it's just Texas, we need to take note of it, and your help is much appreciated. All right. This next one comes to us from Garage Door Jeff. Now, if you don't remember why he's calling himself Garage Door Jeff, you might remember that he wrote me an email sometime back how he'd get up in the morning, open his garage door, and start to exercise while listening to the Rational Boomer podcast. And I thought that interesting that his neighbors might hear it and might look sideways at him. And he explained he lives out where there's not many people around. Anyway, that's how he got the name Garage Door Jeff. I thought it interesting, Garage Door Jeff, that you gave yourself a nickname. That's not how it usually goes, but that's the nickname I probably would have given you anyway. He says, "Hi, Boomer. Hell, I'd listen just for the quotes like today. Without money, he's just an old man shitting his pants, eating a Big Mac. That's too good." Well, thank you. Yeah, that is my quote. I just call them as I see them. He goes on to say, "But I get so much more. I get informed and most importantly, made to feel more optimistic. That's why two bred mutts and a miscellaneous wildlife now hear your morning podcast or your podcast at about 5 a.m. daily out of my open garage door. And Morning Joe has one less viewer. I call that getting 4 burned stoned at once." Okay. I'm going to get a call from MSNBC because I'm affecting their ratings. Thank you very much for that. He goes on to say, "I can tell from listening that you're a man comfortable with risk when it's properly analyzed and measured. And on a profile that measures that attribute, I'm sure you score above average. I'm sure I score below average. The fact that he even could be the nominee is horrifying to me." Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not necessarily prone to risk. It's more so that I'm just arrogant enough to know that I'm right when I say something. I've looked into it. I've analyzed it. And, a lot of what I say is opinion. So I can't really be wrong if it's my opinion. But it isn't a risk if I'm not afraid of being wrong. And I'm not. I'm wrong frequently. And I just say, okay, I was wrong. Now let's figure out where we're going now. I think that's the one problem people have. They're terrified of being wrong. no matter how scared you are, or no matter how much you try to protect yourself from being wrong, you're going to be wrong now and again. So just fucking accept it and move on. So I'm not really necessarily comfortable with risk. There's a lot of things I won't risk, but I study most things I do enough to believe I know all the factors. See, that's people say, how do you think? Why do you seem so optimistic? You have to understand my mindset. When I was a young man and I had my father, and I learned how to read people because I was afraid of him going off the deep end. And then it went a step farther. When I had situations that I know might bring something on with him, um, I would analyze situations. I would look at the potentiality of it, and I would see what all things could happen. It could be any number of things. I would consider all those things and decide what I would do in each situation. It sounds like a lot of work, sounds like a lot of mind fucking going on. And maybe it was at first, but it's just become my normal practice. And it's pretty easy for me to do that. And that, if I have any kind of neurosis, it's that. But I think it works well for me. I don't like to be stressed out. I don't like to take risks. So every situation I have, whether it be doing the podcast or or making a decision on something, I think about every angle, and I think about how I will react in every situation. It doesn't really take that long. It's not that hard for me now anyway. Um, and so when I say something or I do something, I do seem confident about it because I've gone over it in my head 100 times. I mean, when I have a story that I'm imparting to you, and it may be something that would stress you out or cause you concern, understand that I've already looked at that story. And then I thought about all the eventualities, what could happen, what could cause things to happen, what's going on around it. And then I make my decisions there. And that's the last thing I'll tell you. A lot of people have trouble making decisions. And that is where a lot of your stress comes from. Oh, what should I pick? I mean, my wife, when we go out to eat, she has trouble picking what she's going to eat. What if I pick the wrong thing? Well, pick the right thing tomorrow when we go someplace else. It's not a big fucking deal. But people struggle with that. And I'm not trying to put anybody down for it. Certainly not my wife. It's just the way people think. But I learned a long time ago something. You're better to make the wrong decision than no decision, because at least you're moving forward. You make the wrong decision, it doesn't make you a bad or a dumb person. It's just natural. Everybody makes wrong decisions. But from that wrong decision, you learn a valuable lesson, and you'll never make that wrong decision again. So actually, you've gained something. Like if I go to a restaurant and I order the hamburger and the hamburger sucks, well, I won't like the meal very much. But you know what? I never order that hamburger again. I'll get the pork tenderloin or the chicken or something. So don't be afraid to make decisions, and always make decisions. Don't procrastinate about it. Lay the chips on the table, say, I'm doing this. And if it turns out, you're awesome. If it's fucked up and you're wrong, so what? Step back, take a look, and do it another way. All right. The email goes on. You cite that he'll be out of money and too busy and tied up to effectively campaign. One thing about that tub of shit that we have to admit, he's tireless and persistent. He makes the time. He's like a cockroach. And as for money, foreign players can get him whatever he needs. $1 billion is nothing. Disagree. When Donald Trump was president, or just after he left the presidency, he had some value. He had some play in the game. He's lost a lot of that. People will say, well, he'll just go to Russia. Why would Putin want him? Putin only wanted him as a useful idiot where he could do something. But as he loses support and he loses power and he loses money, he's really not worth anything to anybody. As far as getting $1 billion from his supporters or even foreign players, I don't see that happening either. I mean, for a while he might. For a while he got a lot of money from the Trumplafucks, but even that starting to wane. You have to understand it's you're giving him too much credit. You think he can continue like this forever, and so does he. And that's the fatal flaw. He can't continue like this forever. It will ultimately cause him to crash. You're giving him too much credit. He's not superhuman. He is failing badly now. He's losing ground now, and it's not going to come back. There is nothing that shows he's going to come back. So I disagree with you there. He goes on to say, and speaking of foreign players, now the collective of North Korea, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and China would all like to see U.S. fucked, and they all know exactly what would do that. So what can those lunatics think up and accomplish between now and the election? You're worried about that? I don't think they can do anything. You want an example? Well, we know the Russians meddled in the 2016 election, right? And Donald Trump won. But I think there were more factors there that caused Donald Trump to win. But what about 2020? Russians meddled in that too, and no doubt China did too. How'd that go for them? They didn't win. They lost because there were a lot of problems, and Donald Trump had already lost a lot of ground by 2020. So the Chinese and the Russians can do whatever they want. They aren't going to help him win in 2024 because he's buried himself far too deep. It's not going to fucking work. It's just not. He goes on to say, and then there's Biden. I love him, but good grief. Sometimes the stuff he says is like, wow. I hope they're keeping him off the bicycle. I hate to think that we're one broken hip away from losing the country. So those are my concerns. I pre-concede it's a gloomy outlook, but there's a lot of scar tissue after 7 years of this crazy fuck screaming at us. I just want this psychopath to go away and leave us alone. We should be globally and collectively embarrassed that a man like him can have hit this big an impact on the world. Best, Garage Door Jeff. He goes on to say, P.S. Old Soul is absolutely amazing. She needs to do more podcast with you. Check out Black Boot on TikTok. Very funny content. Now, Jeff, here's what I'm going to tell you. Since Donald Trump was president, we've had a lot of Chicken Littles. Oh, the sky is going to fall. Donald Trump is going to do this. He can do anything. Donald Trump can't do jack shit. He's been failing for fucking years now. He's not getting stronger. He's not getting more powerful. He's getting weaker. One thing you have to do when you're dealing with anything in life, most people will go into something assuming the worst. And their strategy for that is, well, if I assume the worst and it turns out the worst, then I'll be prepared. Now, you don't fucking do that. You don't assume the worst in anything, no matter what you do. Even if you know you're going to fail, you got to assume the best. Because even if you do fail, you'll perform better than what you thought you would be even able to do. And you'll learn a few things. From the moment Donald Trump came into office, I knew he would be a shit show, just based on his personality and my experience with that kind of personality. I knew it was going to be bad, but never once did I think that we would not get out of it, get clear of it, and things would get better. Not once did I ever think that. And I've been telling you that on TikTok and all the other platforms for almost 3 years now. Not as long with the podcast, but certainly on TikTok. And a lot of people said the same thing. Oh, no, it's never going to happen. Nothing's ever going to happen to Donald Trump. It's Armageddon. We're fucking done. Well, here we are on September 14th, 2023. Keep in mind, he took office in 2016, so we're 7 years after the fact. Where are we now? Did Armageddon hit us? Did it all get worse? It's been bad, no question. But you can't deny the things are getting better. It's slow going, but you remember he put us behind the eight ball for fucking 5 to 6 years. We can't just flip a switch and say, okay, it's all better now. Not going to happen that way. We got to put in the work, assume the best, and get this fucker done. And trust me, we will get this fucking done. All right. This next one comes from Paul. He says, I want to thank you for helping with my diet. I thought, what the fuck is he talking about? Now I get it. He says, was listening to your show and I was feeling peckish. I like that word. That is until you started talking about Trump and Kerry Lake bumping uglies, followed with describing Buggerlug's preparation for the deed. Hunger gone, period. With this material, you could branch into the world of weight loss. Thanks, Mike. Paul. If you don't remember, I was imagining, Eric had brought up the fact that Kerry Lake and Donald Trump may be having a little, I don't know, some kind of connection. And I was trying to imagine what sexual encounter with Donald Trump and Kerry Lake might be. She'd have to grab a putty knife and get the makeup off her face, and I can't imagine what's underneath all that shit. But then Donnie would have to go into another room, relieve himself of his diaper, which no doubt was dirty, and then he'd have to clean up a little bit. Yeah, the whole scene doesn't bode well for people eating, so I'm not going to get into it again. But thank you, Paul. I probably won't get into a world of weight loss because I would not be a good example of that. That's that's like me starting a page about fashion. A guy who wears polo shirt and shorts or joggers or whatever. Not a fashion guy. All right, the next one comes from Lorenzo. He says, I love your content. Nothing would please me more than a long conversation with you across a table. I think we might be two peas in a pod, Lorenzo. Well, that might be. And that's easy enough to get done. We probably don't live in the same area, but it doesn't matter because all you have to do is send me an email and say, I want to be on the show. And then while we might not be across the table, we would be able to see one another on Zoom and we could have that conversation. I'd be open to it. Just send me the email, rationalboomer@gmail.com. Tell me what your availability is and we'll figure something out. So, Lorenzo, the challenge has been extended. All right, this one I believe comes from Dave. He's the gentleman that lives in Minnesota. He says, hey, Mike, it's your Southeast Minnesota connection. I'm here to jump on the old soul train. Yes, I said that on purpose. I see what you did there. I love that show. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always understood that black music is better than white music. Always has been, always will be. Actually, white music often just replicates what black music has done. I heard a comedian once, and I don't remember the whole joke, but he made a comment. He said, people of color are just better at everything than white people. And when you think about it, music and maybe even acting, certainly sports of all kinds. Yeah. Yeah. If any of us white people are good at anything, it's probably because we're imitating people of color. He says, anyway, I've gained so much knowledge from listening to your conversation with Old Soul, as well as the conversations I've had with a black female singer I occasionally play gigs with. Yes, bad English. No, not the band, my grammar. Anyway, again, I can't stop asking questions. My quest for knowledge on the trials and tribulations of the black experience, as well as just trying to be a better old white guy, is insatiable. Listening to these incredible people, particularly the women, is so eye-opening. One quick request, if Old Soul is on again, if you could figure out a way to get her voice balanced with yours, that would be great. You almost blew the subwoofer in my car a couple of times because I had to turn her up all the way and didn't get it turned down quick enough. when you entered the conversation. LOL. Love your show and your TikToks. Maybe run into you again over the holidays when we're up in the cities. Peace, brother. Dave. Okay, now I was thinking this was somebody else, but I know who Dave is. Dave does get up into the cities, and maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe it was longer than that. He asked if I'd meet him for breakfast. I said, fuck yeah, I'll meet you for breakfast. So he showed up. He brought his daughter, who was an amazing girl, and we had a nice conversation and breakfast, and it was fun. I was thinking about the gentleman who's out in Western Minnesota, the gentleman who has a landscaping company, spent some time in prison. He's a very colorful guy. This is a different guy. I haven't heard from him for a while. So where the fuck you been, Dave? Where you been? Anyhow, by all means, Dave, if you're up in the cities, let me know and we'll get together again. All right, we are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. All right, we had a bit of a surprise announcement out of Mitt Romney yesterday. And I'm trying to imagine why he did it. And there's a few reasons why he may have. U.S. Senator Mitt Romney of Utah announced Wednesday that he will not seek re-election in 2024. Maybe he's getting too old. He's 76 years old. Not in the Senate. Fuck, you got another 5 to 10 years left in you if you go by Mitch McConnell or Dianne Feinstein. But he's not going to run for re-election. Now, message signals a likely end to his political career, which kicked off in 1994 with a failed challenge to U.S. Senator Edward Kennedy in Massachusetts. Didn't work, so he moved to Utah. He's a Mormon, so that makes sense. At the conclusion of his Senate term, which ends in 2025. Now, frankly, it's time for a new generation of leaders, the 76-year-old Republican said in a video post on X, formerly known as Twitter. I heard Hawk on TikTok say something that I thought was brilliant. When it was Twitter, you would say, well, we tweeted out, but now it's called X. So what do you call it? You can't say tweeted it out on X. So Hawk suggested maybe we call it an excretion. That seems to be more appropriate at this point. Anyway, Mitt said, they're the ones that need to make the decisions that will shape the world they will be living in. I think I've heard that comment before. Oh, yeah, it was me. The young people should be the ones determining their destiny. I said it like that, but basically the same thing. Now, Romney, the 2012 GOP presidential nominee and former governor of Massachusetts, segued his announcement into speaking about the country's future through the lens of the upcoming 2024 presidential election. Now, this senator said he doesn't believe that President Joe Biden or former President Donald Trump is capable of handling important issues in this country that it currently faces, including the national debt, global warming, and the ambitious authoritarians of Russia, which I find an interesting statement. Now, Donald Trump wasn't good with the debt. He adds $7 trillion to it. Global warming, Republicans seem to think that's a fucking hoax, and ambitious authoritarians of Russia and China, yet somehow the Republicans revere Vladimir Putin. So don't put that on Joe Biden or the Democrats. It's you motherfucking Republicans. He goes on to say the next generation of leaders must take America to the next stage of global leadership. I agree. While I'm not running for re-election, I'm not retiring from the fight. I'll be your United States Senator until January of 2025. So we're looking at almost 2 years before he leaves. I'll keep working on these and other issues, and I will advance our state's numerous priorities. Romney's later career was often defined by his fraught relationship with Trump. They did not get along. Now, during his 2012 presidential campaign, Romney sought out Trump's endorsement, helping to elevate the then reality television star as a political figure. By the beginning of his Senate term in 2018, however, the mild-mannered Romney had taken to publicly calling out Trump's conduct as a president, a conviction deeply rooted in his Mormon faith. Well, now see, here's a religious guy that didn't excuse him for his sins, unlike the evangelicals. Now, in 2019, Romney broke with the party and became the only Republican who voted to convict Trump for improperly seeking help from Ukraine to boost his chances of re-election against Biden. Yeah, he voted to convict Donald Trump in the Senate of his impeachment and ultimately get him kicked out. But that's just one Republican. They needed probably 10 to do that, and that was never going to happen. In 2021, he did it again, this time over his efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. So once again, he voted to convict Donald Trump, but to no avail. Now, he was asked on Wednesday whether Trump, as likely GOP presidential nominee in 2024, played a role in his decision to retire. Romney told the Huffington Post it did not. I call bullshit, Mitt. I think the people of Utah don't always agree with me regarding the posture I took toward Donald Trump, but they respect people who vote their conscience. He said, I don't have any question in my mind. I'd have one if I run again. I bet you do, because Utah's full of Trumplafucks, and you aren't Donnie's buddy. So chances are you might not have won. But the question is, why isn't he running? Is it because he thinks he's going to lose? That's a distinct possibility. Is he just disgusted with the Republican Party and what they've become and he doesn't want to be a part of it? That could be too. But there might be something else. And this is a reach. This is just an observation. There is nothing that says this concept is even real. But like I say, I look at things and I try to figure shit out. Why would he quit now and do it 2 years prior to when he's going to leave? He could have waited till a month before the re-election or 2 months or 6 months and said, I'm not going to run again. But he chose 2 years out from when he would be leaving office. Does that mean one of two things? Does that mean for the next 2 years, he's going to go hard against Donald Trump because he has nothing to lose, that he may side with the Democrats just to take Donald Trump down, thinking he'd be a hero for doing it? And frankly, he would be if he decided to do that. Could that be? Yeah, it's possible it could be. Or here's another deep state conspiracy theory. And I only think of it because it makes a little sense. If you were to pick the Republican Party, especially people in the Senate, if you were going to pick out the most reasonably minded Republican, I think most people would say Mitt Romney, even though he's got some crazy shit going on, and he did support Donald Trump for a time, so I don't forgive him of his sins. The Book of Mormon and God may forgive him, but I don't forgive him. But here's the deal. The Republican Party is trying to figure out what the fuck they're going to do. They got Donald Trump is the leader, far and away the leader in the primary. But in all seriousness, Donald Trump could be out on his ass at any point. Or he just may not be capable of running, whether it be physical or mental or legal. Then what do? They've got a whole group of other people that are equally as crazy, and nobody has any interest in them. They're getting 2 and 3 and 4%. Yeah, I know DeSantis gets more than that, but he's fucking done. He's pretty much ruined his chances. So maybe As they get closer to the election, they're going to say, well, Donald Trump's out of the way now. We got to try to bring some semblance of sanity back to this party if we have hopes of doing anything. So maybe, just maybe, they pick out another candidate. And I would suspect they'd have to do it within the next 6 to 8 months to make it work, or some point before the primary. But maybe they go to Mitt Romney and say, look, man, you're relatively normal for the Republican Party. You don't fit in here, but maybe you're what we need to run against Joe Biden to have any fucking chance at all. And I'll be honest, Mitt Romney won't have a chance against Joe Biden, but he'd probably have a better chance than DeSantis or Donald Trump. Now, I have no reason to believe that that is true, and maybe he's just going to hang it up and live off his money. Now on TikTok, I kiddingly said, or exaggerating, I said, got a fucking $1 billion. Why would he want to do it? And somebody came back because they don't know when I'm being sarcastic. They said, he doesn't have $1 billion. Okay, I looked it up. He has about $175 million. But to me, there isn't much difference between $175 million and $1 billion compared to what I have or what you have. So just fucking relax. But I don't know. I mean, I think we're looking at a Republican Party who is in desperate times. They won't say that, but they've got their main candidate who could be in fucking jail, literally, or on home lockdown or whatever. And all the other ones don't really gather much interest. And they've all been talking shit about Donald Trump to a certain extent. They're starting to get a little cocksure about it. And they know they're going to have to go after Donald Trump. Maybe they need to bring somebody in at the last minute that they think will actually gain some traction. He won't, but we know the Republicans aren't the brightest fucking crowd. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said, you're lucky, reportedly told Romney during Trump's 2019 impeachment trial, according to a forthcoming book by The Atlantic's McKay Coppins. You can say the things that we all think. You're in a position to say things about him that we all agree with, but can't say. That's the intriguing thing. Now, of course, Mitch McConnell told the author, yeah, I don't recall making that statement, nor the fact that he called Trump an idiot. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if Mitch McConnell did call him an idiot, because frankly, that's an accurate observation. Now, in the Senate, Romney has had an influential role in shaping policy, including helping negotiate and pass the bipartisan infrastructure overhaul, gun safety laws, and gay marriage protections. Senator Romney's experience as an executive made him an impactful presence from day one. McConnell said in a statement on Wednesday, his experience as a campaigner made him a dogged spokesman for worthy causes, and his deep faith and integrity have earned the admiration of each of his colleagues. So Mitt is not running for the Senate in 2024, but will he run for president? I think the odds are that he won't, but I can see the Republicans trying to figure fucking something out, because what they got going now is not fucking working. All right, here's kind of a disturbing story. I thought we had this squared away, but maybe not. A federal judge on Wednesday declared illegal a revised version of the federal policy that prevents the deportation of hundreds of thousands of immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. Now, U.S. District Judge Andrew Hannon agreed with Texas, of course, Texas, and 8 other states suing to stop the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or the DACA program. The judge's ruling was ultimately expected to be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, sending the program's fate before the High Court for a third time. Now, Hannon barred the government from approving any new applications, but left the program intact for existing recipients during the expected appeals process. Hannon said his order does not require the federal government to take any action against DACA recipients, current DACA recipients. The states have argued that the Obama administration didn't have the authority to first create the program in 2012 because it circumvented Congress. Now, in 2021, Hannon had declared the program illegal, ruling it had not been subject to public notice and comments periods required under the federal administration's procedure. The Biden administration tried to satisfy Hannon's concerns with a new version of DACA that took effect in October of 2022, a year ago, and was subject to public comments as part of the formal rulemaking process. But Hannon, who was appointed by former President George W. Bush in 2002, ruled the updated version of DACA was still illegal. He had previously said DACA was unconstitutional and it should be up to Congress to enact legislation, shielding people under the program known as Dreamers. Hannon also had previously ruled that the state had standing to file their lawsuit because they had been harmed by the program. It's a judge in fucking Texas. And I bet you can't guess who the other 7 states are. States have claimed they incur hundreds of millions of dollars in healthcare, education, and other costs when immigrants are allowed to remain in the country illegally. Now, the states that sued are Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Nebraska, South Carolina, West Virginia, Kansas, and Mississippi. Are you surprised by any of those motherfucking states? Yeah, I don't think so. Now, those defending the program, the federal government, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and the state of New Jersey had argued that states failed to present evidence that any of the costs they allege they have incurred have been tied to DACA recipients. They also argued that Congress has given the Department of Homeland Security the legal authority to set immigration enforcement policies. This is one of those things that we may have to wait until 2024. Presuming Biden gets elected, the House gets a Democratic majority, and the Senate gets a Democratic majority, then a lot of the stuff will be cleared up. I know you're dealing with the student loans and you're going to have to start paying them back on October 1st. But here's the deal. That isn't necessarily over. This DACA thing isn't necessarily over. This judge wants Congress to enact it. Well, if the Democrats do have the majority in Congress, it will be enacted. There'll be a lot of things happening after 2024. And I hope that Joe Biden gets on the stick with Congress, goes a little progressive to try to get a lot of stuff that we've lost and that we should have had in the first place. Let's talk about Donald Trump and his propensity for delaying things. Oh, he loves to delay. Unfortunately, he's delaying the inevitable. He can delay it sometimes, but it's always coming for him. Donald Trump may not be able to delay much longer in the classified documents case in Florida, and the judge overseeing that case just quietly let him and his legal team know that. A legal analyst said Wednesday, legal analyst Lisa Rubin noted that Judge Cannon, who has previously been reversed on appeal for deference to the former president, former President Donald Trump, in an underlying civil matter, entered a 4th order on Wednesday in which she summarized other orders issued throughout the day. Now, in that filing, however, there is reportedly a hidden nugget of key information. Oh, that Judge Aileen Cannon, she's a sneaky what do I want to say? It's the word I want to say. It doesn't matter. Fuck. 63 years old. I can't remember a word I use all the time. Anyway, Judge Aileen Cannon entered a 4th order today, both summarizing her rulings on the government's protective order motion and setting up further briefing. But in a footnote, she seems to have quantified the volume of classified discovery to come. Interesting. Now, Rubin reported Cannon says that yesterday the special counsel acknowledged the classified information in this case consists of approximately 3,500 pages classified at various levels. I don't think she was supposed to do that. Rubin then added, if that's the totality of the classified information at issue, Trump's team review and an analysis thereof may not exactly justify further delay. After all, the general rule of thumb is that a banker's box of materials roughly holds 3,000 pages. So them saying it's just too much for us to read, we can't prepare. Yeah, that doesn't cut it with based on what Aileen Cannon said. She did something else, and I think this is hilarious. Donald Trump had made a motion to Aileen Cannon, Judge Aileen Cannon, that regarding the classified documents, what he was asking for is, he goes, I'm busy. I'm in Florida. I'm in New Jersey, wherever the fuck I'm at. And I can't get to DC into a skiff or a skiff in my area. Here's what we'd like to do. Why don't you let us go through the classified documents at my place in Mar-a-Lago? We'll just go through it and figure it out. And of course, we'll send it back. And what's so hilarious about this is basically a guy who stole a bunch of shit. And that shit was forcibly taken back from him. He tried to hide it. They took it back from him. Now he's saying, listen, man, all that shit I stole, let me have it back just for a while, a wink and a nod, and I'm going to go through it here because I'm way too busy to do what everybody else in the world fucking has to do with classified documents. Now that's a crazy ask. And you would think there'd be no chance of having that happen. Only that motion was made to Aileen Cannon, and God knows what she's going to do. The good news is that Aileen Cannon said, no, you're going to have to look at this stuff in a skiff and you're going to have to fucking work it out. So Donald Trump is going to be probably pretty mad. I mean, why would you give it back to this guy? I mean, if say a guy robs a bank and he's got arrested and he's going to court and they're saying he took $1 million. And the guy says, well, listen, we got to count that money to see if you're accurate about that. So just bring it over to my house, drop it on the front step. We'll count it just so we know what the fuck is up and we'll give it back to you. Yeah, you're going to fucking do that. Nobody's going to fucking do that. But Aileen Cannon, for once, did the right thing. And I guess Donald Trump's got to be a little upset. He's probably thinking to himself, what, she didn't get the check? She didn't get the check? This is why you got to pay people up front, Donnie. Nobody's buying that you're going to pay on time because you don't. You never fucking do. So we've got Kevin McCarthy setting up this impeachment. And I'm convinced that Kevin McCarthy doesn't want to do this because he doesn't have the votes, because it doesn't work, and it's going to do nothing but hurt the Republican Party. But, the Freedom Caucus wants to do it. Matt Gaetz wants to do it. And Matt Gaetz is out talking shit about his buddy Kevin McCarthy. Matt Gaetz claimed on MSNBC's The Beat with Ari Melber that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy had no real intent to follow through with the impeachment of President Joe Biden, and the whole effort is merely a mirage on Wednesday. Now, I've never said this before, but I think Matt Gaetz is absolutely right. Excuse me. I think he's just doing it to keep MAGA happy in hopes that he can use it as leverage when he finally has to agree to the appropriations and the budget so we don't shut down the country. I think it is a bunch of bullshit. I don't think he has any intentions of doing it because he realizes this is not going to work. Now, after Gaetz tore into McCarthy, calling him a sad and pathetic man who lies to hold on to power, Now, that's a mean thing to say, but you can't say it's not accurate. It's pretty accurate. Host Ari Melber asked the congressman to react to a clip of McCarthy claiming that the Biden impeachment inquiry was not impeachment. I could tell if you cut away to Kevin McCarthy or a commercial for low T because yesterday's impeachment is somehow today's not impeachment. Gates declared, "Good gracious, if we actually have to make the case about Joe Biden, let's hope we have effective people like Jim Jordan and James Comer making the case and maybe turn off Kevin McCarthy's microphone for a while." Effective people like Jim Jordan and James Comer. I think that's a little bit of a misrepresentation because there's been a number of hearings where Jim Jordan and James Comer has led those hearings. And what have we found out in those hearings? Fucking nothing. No evidence, no witnesses, just a bunch of yapping and nothing accomplished. Because that's what Republicans specialize in, doing fucking nothing. Now, Gates said, "I can peel back the curtain here. Kevin McCarthy is going to advance an actual impeachment on Joe Biden, a lot like he was going to advance an impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas. Remember back in January of this year, he kept saying we're going to impeach Mayorkas and that the people were blocking his speakership were blocking the impeachment of Mayorkas? Well, once Kevin got power, all of that just went by the wayside. And I think you're witnessing the same gaslighting and the same illusion and the same mirage right here. You know what the best part of this is? Matt Gaetz is a Republican. Kevin McCarthy is a Republican. They're spending so much time fighting amongst themselves, they ain't going to have time to deal with the Democrats. Matt Gaetz goes on to say he doesn't really mean it. He knows he broke the deal in January. He knows that there are enough of us in the Republican conference who want to hold him to that deal. And so he's throwing impeachment out like an ill-cast lure, and he has no real intent to follow through. And by the way, if he did, we'd subpoena Hunter Biden. Good question. Why have you never subpoenaed Hunter Biden? If this was a serious effort, call it an inquiry, an impeachment, an oversight, whatever you want. If you were really serious, you'd subpoena Hunter Biden and get answers. They're not serious, and that's why you see this failure theater in the absence of real accountability. Gaetz has had a strained relationship, to say the least, with McCarthy since leading the House Republican rebellion in January, which halted the election of McCarthy as Speaker until a deal with a certain concession was struck. Now, you remember back when they were doing the votes on Kevin McCarthy, there was a point when Matt was sitting in the seats in the peanut gallery, if you will. No, he was wherever he was sitting. And Kevin McCarthy was getting a little steamed, and he walked right up to him, pointed at him, put his finger in his face, and and Matt Gaetz seemed a little nervous about that. So I think to suggest there's some contention between Matt and Kevin is an understatement. So I think you're absolutely right, Matt, that McCarthy has no intention of actually going through an impeachment. It's a bad idea from the beginning. It's going to work against the Republicans. And the fact of the matter is, you put it up for a vote, it's going to fail, and you're going to look stupid. Now, Matt, you can try to put together a vote of no confidence for Kevin McCarthy, but I have a feeling you're going to lose that too. And then what do you got? You blew your wad and you've got nothing now. So as much as you don't think that Kevin will put it up for a vote or push this any further, I guarantee you, you motherfucker, you're not going to ask for a vote of no confidence. You're going to threaten. You're going to be the tough guy. You're going to puff up your chest, but you're never going to do it because you're going to fucking fail. All right, let's talk about the case against Donald Trump in D.C. Federal District Judge Tanya Chutkin warned Trump attorneys in an order responding to ex-President Donald Trump's motion demanding she step down from the trial on charges of conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. On Monday, Trump attorneys filed a motion demanding Judge Chutkan recuse herself on the basis of the statement she made while sentencing other defendants who participated in the J6 attack. Now, the filing reads this way. In making these statements, Judge Chutkan agreed with portions of Defendant Palmer's sentencing memorandum, which similarly and wrongly placed blame on President Trump and complained that he had not been charged. And they give the numbers of the complaint. Those voices, including the voice of then President himself, had convinced persons such as Mr. Palmer that the election was fraudulent and that they must take action to stop the transition of the presidency. While many of the people who participated in the Capitol riot will be going to prison, the architects of that horrific event will likely never be charged with any criminal offense. Although Judge Chutkan correctly noted that she does not have any influence on charging decisions, her above comments stating, "You have made a very good point, that the people who exhorted you and encouraged you and rallied you to go and take action to fight have not been charged. And you have a point that the people who may be the people who planned this and funded it and encouraged it haven't been charged. But that's not a reason for you to get a lower sentence, reflect her apparent opinion of the President Trump's conduct." Similarly, Judge Chutkan's statement that "I have my opinions" suggests that, in her view, formed almost 2 years ago before the initiation of this matter, President Trump should be charged. Well, she never said that. Now, following that motion, Judge Chutkan issued an order demanding Special Counsel Jack Smith's team to file any opposition within 3 days and warning Trump's lawyers to give Smith notice before filing such a motion or risk having future motions denied without prejudice. All right. I believe this is from Jack Smith. Minute order as to Donald J. Trump. Upon consideration of defendant's 50 motion for recusal, it is hereby ordered that the government shall file any opposition no later than September 14th, 2023, and the defense shall file any reply within 3 calendar days from the filing date of the government's opposition. All other deadlines set by the court remain in effect. Defense counsel is reminded of the requirement to confer with opposing counsel before filing any motion and to indicate whether the motion is opposed. See 905-2023 second minute order. Future motions that fail to comply with that requirement may be denied without prejudice. Signed by Judge Tanya Chutkan. She did that on 9/11/2023. The judge's order also points out that the issue has no effect on any other deadlines the court has set. Well, Judge Chutkan is not going to recuse herself. What she did wasn't out of line at all. In fact, it's in line with what judges typically do. She never stated Donald Trump's name, but even if she did, she still had every right to do that. So this is not going to be a thing. Judge Chutkan isn't going to recuse herself. And as I said in the previous podcast, why should she? Aileen Cannon didn't recuse herself when she should have. Clarence Thomas didn't recuse himself when he should have. Judge Alito, Supreme Court Justice Alito, didn't recuse himself when he should have. So this whole recusal thing is a big joke. And the people that made it a joke was Republicans. You want to do whatever the fuck you want to do and think you can get away with it. And then you want to call the Democrats out for doing something that's not even similar because there's no reason to have her recuse herself. The 3 judges I talked about all have extremely good reasons to recuse themselves, but they refuse. So you Republicans can whine and cry all you want, but I guarantee you Judge Chutkan is not going to recuse herself. And even if she did, that doesn't make this shit go away. They don't like Judge Chutkan because she's kind of the Judge Rory Bean of this shit. Everybody that's come up against her and has been convicted usually gets more than what's recommended. And we can only hope that will follow the same process with Donald Trump. If he's supposed to get 10, maybe she'll give him 15. But as I've always said, he only needs 5 to be done. And he's got 91 felony charges. Donald Trump is done. Judge Chutkan may offer the kill shot. It may be Aileen Cannon inadvertently, or it may be McCaffrey down in Georgia. But either somebody's going to get him and it's going to be done, or they all may get him and he will be fucking buried. And that's more likely than anything. All right. We're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen, as I appreciate that very much. I sometimes wonder as I sit here every day for an hour, who in the fuck would listen to that? But apparently there's a number of you that will, and I appreciate it immensely. And I will show up every day, hopefully continuing trying to fool you that I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Anyhow, you have a great day, and we will be back tomorrow.